Hello, everyone. I am so excited to introduce you to Tamar Greengarden. We first met each other properly a couple years ago when Tamar took our school yoga program. We've kind of been watching Tamar's journey. We were actually just speaking about her recent trip to Bali for her honeymoon, which was so exciting. So we were sharing our passion for travel and incorporating some of these rituals in. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. Today, well, although it's kind of linked because we're talking
Sometimes,
about
yeah.
we're talking about thematic lesson planning. What we hear from a lot of our kids yoga teachers or educators is how you can effectively weave in. And what we find tomorrow is that some people say, okay, great, I've got my first themes or I got my first ideas, but how do I continue on? How do I keep showing up week after week, month after month with new exciting ideas? And Tamar has one of her superpowers is to put together these really exciting, entertaining, you know, highly focused thematic lesson plans. And one of the thing too, Tamara, for us to think about is it's hard to engage children's attention now,
Mhm.
right? And so I personally have a big, a passion for themes. So I think we share that. So before we dive into that, let's get caught up to where you're at. You were a special education teacher, and then
Yep.
you've done some pretty exciting things since then. Why don't you tell us your background and your passion and get us up to present day?
Sure. So thanks so much for having me. I'm very excited to talk all things themes.
Okay.
Uh, I first got introduced to yoga when I was in college studying to be a special education teacher. Um, I attended my first yoga class just kind of on a whim. I hadn't really been introduced to yoga before. Um, And I went in and the class had already gotten started. So I kind of tried to like sneak in and I saw this huge pile of blankets. And so I went and took one of the blankets, thinking that's what I used to practice on, and quickly realized that using a yoga blanket on a yoga floor doesn't work so well when trying to get into different asanas, and didn't even know what poses were. So the teacher came over and quickly was like, I think you might want a yoga mat. So once I was correctly set up, I just fell in love with the class, and started taking classes more regularly, getting into the practice. And I was doing my field work in a middle school classroom that had a yoga teacher come into the classroom to teach the students once a week. And it was just like my aha moment. I was like,
Mm,
this is the perfect way of blending my passion for special education and kids, as well as this like new evolving passion and love for yoga. So I just continued kind of on that journey, figuring out how to incorporate yoga with the kids and exploring that more in my fieldwork, just kind of seeing what things kids picked up on.
mm.
Um, and I went abroad and taught for a year abroad, where I also volunteered in a school that had a yoga program and just gained some more insight into bringing yoga to kids. And then coming back, I got my kids certification, my kids for special needs for yoga certification, chair yoga certification, prenatal, kind of just
Yes,
everything, all encompassing.
yes.
And so I was teaching special education full time, but also, again, just trying to see. We would be doing a lesson about the farm, right? And we would be taking a field trip to the farm. And so, great, let's start to create some yoga poses about different farm animals, just exploring and seeing kind of what stuck with the kids. Um, while I started picking up some studio classes, some private classes. And once I felt comfortable enough, I was able to make that leap of going part time special education to part time teaching kids yoga. And I am now full time teaching yoga to kind of that whole gamut of people, from infancy and pregnancy all the way through adulthood, and teaching neurotypical as well as diverse learners.
Gosh, I love your story. I just want to highlight a few things. I love that you shared the story about your first yoga class because so many of us have those stories, but we don't share. And what stops you from going is the I'm not sure what to do, or I don't know how it's going to feel, or, and you did it anyway. Of course, you went in
Yeah.
and you chose you didn't choose a mat, you chose a blanket, right?
Yeah.
Super awkward. But you could have had that stop you in your tracks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something that small can stop people in their tracks thinking, okay, this is too weird. I don't want to do this again. But you didn't. You kind of were like, all right, carry on. So I love that you spoke
Yeah.
about that. And I love that you talk about this as a journey and exploration. So you came to yoga for yourself, and now
Yeah.
here you are years later and you're sharing it with others. And that is so crucial that you have your own practice, whatever that may be, maybe mindfulness, or for you it was a yoga asana at that point,
Yeah.
meditation, whatever it is for you, but you're coming from that passion. And that's so
Yeah.
important. And I also love that you had some key people along your journey that really gave you that inspiration to see, how does it actually work in the world? How do I
Absolutely.
translate what I'm learning to the classroom or to the studio, whatever. So I love your journey. It's so exciting to watch. And you're taking it step by step. It's not
Totally.
something you've done overnight, and you've done, yeah, I love so much more about that. So coming back to these themes then, what do you see as kind of, why themes, and what do you see are seen as the benefits of using themes within kids yoga?
Well, I think kids are already being exposed to themes. Like in their classroom setting, I
Mm,
know that when I was teaching, that was what got kids the most excited. It made the most sense. It was what was relative and happening already in front of them. We tend to see themes about the seasons, about the different holidays, about different pop culture or history that's happening already in front of the kids, that's already being taught in the classrooms. So it was kind of an easy an idea and way to kind of grasp the ideas of how to teach yoga to kids, was by kind of introducing it to them with ideas that they're already being taught, but maybe showing them those ideas in a different modality, in a different way to express themselves and comprehend that information and explore it in a different way, right? And be able to deepen it in a way that maybe you can bring the holidays, but let's also bring it back to the yoga philosophies, and how does that
mhm,
incorporate of us being kind human beings to one another and to the earth and to the animals and to nature and to just
mm.
everything around us, and kind of bringing us all together.
Yeah.
Um,
So you're making it relevant and meaningful then, right? You're meeting
yeah,
with them where they're at on topics
totally.
they're already learning or they're already interested in, and making
Mm-hmm.
that connection, but also then taking it beyond and adding some yoga philosophy. Because if you were to go right for the yoga philosophy, it might not make sense, but you're building
Totally.
those connections, right? And I'm assuming
Absolutely.
that you're looking at different themes for different ages. So you talked about farm
Mm-hmm.
earlier. Obviously, that you would do that with middle school, but are
Yeah.
you kind of, how do you build those themes across all the different ages, for example?
Yeah, so I think with our younger ones of like the preschool, kindergarten, that early elementary age, it's really looking at what's happening with the seasons and nature, what's happening, and you can kind of build off of that, right? Like you can do a fall theme of the weather, of the leaves changing, of the pumpkin life cycle, of the apple life cycle, and then that can bring you into the farm, and then you're exploring the different animals, and then you can kind of, for older students, you can still keep that type of theme of maybe fall, but really opening it up and exploring, in middle school, like what happens in the fall, right? Like, and just exploring it in a more broad sense and allowing them to really contribute more. With those older students, I find what works best is when they're also contributing to, the ideas of what the yoga class is going to look like. I think that's where you get the most buy-in, is when it's of interest to them, and they can help lead the classes. And it kind of going back, like, to the structure of the class, I think even when the themes are changing, the structure and the routine, it's really important to stay the same because our kids thrive on structure. They thrive on routine. And that doesn't mean you have to do the same thing every single time, but it should look relatively the same. They should be able to predict what's going to come next and then interweave the themes into those same activities, those same type of breathing, and just maybe change the names of what things are.
Right. I love that. I was thinking about the middle school. You talk about fall. How cool would it be to build in their self-awareness about how they feel in fall?
Mm-hmm.
What actually happens to our mood levels and our temperament or our energy during the changing of the seasons, and then
Yep.
through Halloween, what's that like? How do we bring ourselves back to balance? Because it can be
Mm-hmm.
such an exciting time to go back to school, and then super frenetic with that sort of electric Halloween energy, and there's a full moon put in there.
Oh my
There's a
gosh.
lot going
Oh yeah.
on, and so how do we help our middle schoolers? That could
Mm-hmm.
be a whole theme about how do you bring yourself back to balance during this time of year, for example.
Exactly. Yeah, I think, and that's kind of, I think with middle school, it's so important too about focusing about their feelings and exploring their feelings because they're going through so many changes and they're being influenced in so many different ways that to connect with them and allow them that time and energy and space to just like sit with their feelings and explore, it's getting darker early. How does that affect our energy level? How does that affect our mood towards ourselves, towards others? I think it's really important to take those um, themes and just really make it reflective on themselves and the world at large.
Yeah, I love that. So what would you kind of say, your top tips, since you're so great at this in terms of building your theme? So, say we're working with the little ones like preschool, kindergarten, first
Mhm.
grade, the younger ones. So what are your top tips on putting together these themes?
So I always look at uh, books and I mean, kids yoga stories. I'm constantly coming back to you guys. Like I
Oh,
just the amount of resources you guys provide for images and just ideas of different games and movements that correlate to those themes. It's fantastic. Music is a huge one, right? Like I think I have a whole Spotify playlist of my kids yoga songs um, that correlate with the different themes of different holidays and different seasons. So I think that's a really good way to kind of start by looking at books and by music and trying to incorporate those into the lesson plans, and that can keep you going for a few weeks. You can continue to expand. You can explore 1 to 2 songs that start to um, give certain to provide certain poses, and then the
mm,
next week you do another new song, and you can always go back to that song if the kids really enjoyed it. um, and then I think also just presenting, like, going back to that structure, not changing everything that you're doing, but just change the names of it, like doing that same tree triangle pose. And for one theme, that might look like being called a giraffe. In another theme, if you're talking about nature or weather, it could be a windmill, right? You don't have to constantly come up with different poses. You just maybe change the name and incorporate them into different games.
back to
And
that
possibly,
music. We're always
yeah,
because music is
yeah,
not my personal expertise, so I always look to
yeah,
my musician friends. So Kira Willie is definitely my number one favorite. I talk about her all the time.
all
Barry
the time.
Coral also has some great
Mm-hmm.
kids yoga music. Do you have any other musicians that you really your go-to? I know like Lori
Berkner.
Berkner is great for the little littles.
Fabulous. Yep.
Yeah.
So I actually, and this is even good for um, a little bit older as well. And just for like positive affirmations too. Um, there's this new artist, and I found her on TikTok, um, Mother Moon, and she sings positive self-awareness songs of like, I love my body. And so I use this song and I just like sing it. I tend to sing it when I'm doing my really little ones. Um, and just like reinforcing that we need to like show ourselves love. And I carry that in with even my middle schoolers of doing positive affirmations in front of a mirror to themselves. Just so even if you don't play the song, because it can sound a little babyish and middle schoolers, I don't know, would love that song, but taking the overarching theme of what that song means, right, and then bringing it into your class and your activities. Try to think of other I mean there's a lot of ones on, like, even like Pink Fong has a lot of songs that you wouldn't necessarily think are yoga, but there are so many. Ping Pong is like one of the ones that has like a million songs about every single subject or theme. And so even just using that little bit to bring it into different yoga poses is really helpful. And I always just suggest, like, honestly, just go onto YouTube and like click in whatever theme you're doing, and a million songs will come up.
Right. Like, the other day in class, I was playing on YouTube. I just searched for New England autumn instrumental music. And then it was beautiful in the classroom to have this background of this gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, which I won't fall again, right? That theme. So there it was. And we just had instrumental music to go with it. So that's a great way too. It doesn't have to necessarily be kids yoga music. No. It can be instrumental or some other kind of calming music too. And to have that visual as a backdrop was really pretty.
It's amazing. Yeah, I remember I would always open my classes when I was in a true classroom setting, and I had access to the smart board and everything.
Yes.
Every single day. That's how my students entered into the classroom. Yes. There was whatever type of scenery we were doing. Outer space was always my favorite. Like just galaxy type of music, getting them settled. It just brings that energy so that they're ready to learn.
Right. And you could do the same with ocean, again, with forest, all the different kind of habitats. I love that. Yeah. Great. So we had the first tip about, bringing in books and music. That's great. You've got some other ideas for us?
Yes. So I think it's, again, just like letting kids kind of get to know your students, figure out what they're interested in, and allow that to kind of help create the theme, right? If students are talking about, I know Minecraft was really big at one point, and so I made a whole theme on Minecraft.
Oh, I love that.
Like just and different videos. So then we did different video games. We did Pokemon. We did Star Wars. We did, just like letting the students' interest also guide, and that's also obviously more helpful when it's older students to get that buy-in and that they're able to contribute. And then the other one would just be just to have fun, like explore, see what works, and it's okay if things don't always stick and don't work. Be willing to just be like, oh, okay, that didn't work that time. Maybe I'll try it again, and maybe I'll try it just in a different way, and just not being afraid to try something new.
I'm so glad you said that, because I do feel like that we have so much pressure as educators and parents and caregivers. There's so much going on that I wish for all of us that we could bring back some humor, just some lightness, some playfulness, and just being present with the children and connect. I know that seems simplistic, but sometimes, we need to put our heavy stuff at the door and just be. That's what the children are desperate for, right? Is for us just to be ourselves and bring that sense of fun. I love that. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Now, next, I'd love to hear about a story. We love stories. So if you got a juicy story for us about using one of these themes and kind of what happened and what difference it maybe made.
Yeah. So I had this class last year, and it was a particularly challenging class. It was a fourth grade class that I was coming into their school once a week, and instead of PE, they were having me do yoga for them. Some of the students loved it, but a majority of the students were like, why are you coming in? Why are you taking away my PE class?
Yeah.
And so I really worked a lot on just building that relationship with them. You know, we wouldn't take a lot of time. We would focus more on just like getting to know each other, letting them share, letting them kind of feel at least that they were a bit in control of um, what happened throughout the class. Some classes were really great. Some classes it was kind of touch and go. But so in February, I did a whole theme of Black History Month. And I knew that the school was putting on a really big celebration. They were going to have like a whole big party. They were going to have performances. They were going to get the chance to present like different projects and different dances and different just things they've been exploring in all of their different classes. And so I again took from Kids Yoga Stories that there you had the poses and different historical figures and how it matches up, as well as the positive affirmations. Uh, and just the buy-in I got from that class, they were able to see themselves represented in the yoga poses. They were talking about historical figures that they were learning about, they were going to be presenting about. And so just the engagement was such a drastic change from the engagement from a lot of the other classes. It was amazing. And then they had the opportunity to partner up and come up with their own poses of different historical figures. A lot of them were pop culture figures like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, Simone Biles, like figures that they were growing up seeing now in their lifetime, that they were looking up to and creating different ways to move their body to represent those people, as well as some of them came up with really fantastic positive affirmations. And it was just truly wonderful to see, because even the students who tended to act out during the class or would kind of just like sit on the sideline, didn't really want to participate, like full 100% class participation from every single student. And it was just like, it was just so fun. Like it was lively, and it was lively in a good way. So I think that would probably be one of my most heartfelt kind of good stories.
I love that. I love that. And reminds me when I was researching for the yoga and mindfulness for young athletes resource that we did,
Mm-hmm.
at the back of the book, I was doing research on quotes from famous athletes and how they are practicing yoga mindfulness. And that's so key, because if you're bringing in, look, here's what Kobe Bryant said, here's what Michael Jordan said, and how they use yoga mindfulness in their practice. Again, it's building those connections to, this is just not something you have once a week instead of a PE class, but what's the purpose? How's it gonna help you in your day-to-day life? And look, people that you really admire and you're watching also practice. This is not something that's a fly by night or a trend. This is, this is here to stay, and it's going to help you and your mental well-being. So I love that. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, that just gives me the chills. Yeah. I love it. It's so
It
good.
was really nice.
I always use this analogy of like surfers who go out on the 100th wave, and then that's that 100th wave. It's the same with us, right? And I'm glad you're bringing up these ideas that it's not always perfect. It's like anything. I mean, in any sport or teaching, or as a teacher, even now, some days are great, some days are not so great. And you go away and you think about, what could I have done differently? What can I do different next time? And you just get back in there, right? At the end of the day, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of children, and it doesn't always look like sunshine and rainbows, right?
Nope.
But when it does, wow,
Yeah.
it's worth the struggle and the challenges. I love that you
Yeah.
stuck to it. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So what advice do you have for some of these folks out there saying, it's just too much. It's so exhausting doing all the lesson planning. How can we help them see the joy? How do we help them keep going?
Yeah. I think finding something that I think I touched on a lot of what the students are interested,
Yeah.
but find what you're interested in. Like
Yeah.
I like before I said like outer space was my favorite month that I would introduce that theme. Like also do what you're interested, find what your passions are, um, and bring that in because I think that when the students know that you're passionate about it and that you're excited and you're kind of giddy and you're like, I just want to show you everything, like they're also going to feed off of that energy. So just take a moment, step back and think about, what's like, what do I really love? Like, what would bring me joy? Uh, in teaching. And I think that a lot of times as maybe a classroom teacher, you have to stick to a curriculum, right? But if you're able to take a step back and be the yoga teacher or be able to just bring it in a different setting, uh, bring them bring to the students what you're most passionate about. And then I think that's going to help drive that ability to create the lesson. And again, it doesn't have to be super complex. You don't have to completely change your entire routine, your entire structure, your entire lesson plan. Just kind of interweave it into maybe even daily activities. It doesn't have to be a full 30-minute session of just yoga. You can implement those philosophies, those breathing techniques, those just a couple asanas, even as just like a brain break, and just make it as a thematic unit related to whatever subject you're looking to do it as.
And what are some of your favorite props or resources that you're using? Are you trucking along with a big suitcase of things? What are kind of like in your grab bag?
My car kind of sometimes looks like a clown car.
Right.
I'm just like, how did this all even fit in here?
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, every class I use the chime. I think
Mm.
that is just a beautiful way to start the class, to center the class, to use it throughout the class to help gain the kids' attention rather than using my voice of like, all right, guys, let's settle down. It's like, no, let's just
Yes.
like listen to a bell. Once everyone starts to like hear it, they settle down. Candles are fantastic. I use my candles almost every class as well for Shavasana, or even just as a breathing activity, especially candles that change colors and then you trim the lights and it's like just
Oh.
sets the mood.
And these are battery operated. These are not real candles. Yeah.
Oh, no, no, no. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
little switch on the back. Amazon,
Yeah.
easy. I also I typically have like little squishy balls. You can do so much with that. Balancing, toe yoga, picking up the
Right.
balls and putting them just with your feet, working as a group to see how many like hungry, hungry hippos almost. Like you can do
Mm.
so much activities. With that, I would say the other prop that I tend to use a lot sometimes is also just like cotton balls. Just
Mm.
like super simple. You can do so much with that. You can make it into as a during the winter, they can turn into like little snowballs. You can also make them as like clouds. You can do different games of blowing the cotton balls. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be things that you have to even run out to the store to get. I think just looking and seeing what you have and maybe thinking about using them in a different way.
Yeah, I love it. I love the chime. I would say that if there was
Yeah.
one thing, I would, the wooden chime.
Yeah.
And some of the things, so I see the teachers where I work, they hit the chime to get attention, but I
Mm-hmm.
do it the opposite, that you hit and say, put your finger on your nose or your ear, whatever, your head, when you can't hear it any longer.
Yep.
And I feel like that
Raise your hand.
really that really brings children in quickly. And then we started to do different games with it. For example, I hit it, let's see if we can get around, pass it around the circle before it gets to the end, or you could hit it and do breathing, like you said, 3 deep breaths with the sound. So there's lots of different things. There's a chime, but get creative on lots of different ways you can use it, right? Not just
Yeah,
one.
even like almost like it's a drum I've done where they do the beat, and then like depending on how fast or how slow, that's like the sun salutation. So they're guiding our sun salutation depending on the pace. They tend to like to do it really fast, and so
Yes.
then
Right.
but then
Love
that
it.
kind of like, just there's so many different ways.
My daughter says to do the bebop with it. And I said, okay,
Yeah.
I'll work on that. I love it.
Yes.
Awesome. So how can we find you online? And I'd love to hear kind of what's next for you.
Yeah, so I have a website, yogawithtamar.com. So you can always reach out to me, look and see what I'm doing on there. And for the future, I'm really exploring looking at kind of expanding my hopefully global outreach, helping companies make accessible mindfulness activities and materials for all learners, and so that's kind of my hope in the future.
I love it. Oh, I love it. I am so excited to watch your next steps and watch you grow and develop in all your yoga offerings. Thank you so much for being here with us and for being you. It's a
Thank you
pleasure
for
to
having
talk to
me.
you. Thank you, my
Thank
dear.
you.
See you
Thank
then.
you.